The old wooden porch creaked under Thomas Reilly's boots as he stood in the fading twilight, staring at the dirt road that wound through the Wyoming hills. The wind carried the scent of sagebrush and coming rain, but it did nothing to ease the hollow ache that had lived in his chest for 14 months. His wife, Clara, was gone, taken by a sudden fever that no doctor could stop. Since then, the ranch had grown quiet in a way that felt suffocating. The house was too big, the nights too long, and little 6-year-old Emma barely spoke anymore. She just clutched her mother's old quilt and watched the horizon as if waiting for someone who would never return. Thomas had tried everything. Hired help came and went. Neighbors offered pitying looks and casseroles. But the loneliness clawed deeper every day. In a moment of desperate exhaustion, he had answered an advertisement in the back of a catalog. Mail-order brides from the East, women seeking a fresh start on the frontier. He hadn't expected much. Just someone kind enough to help with Emma and the endless chores. Someone who wouldn't mind a broken man with calloused hands and a heart full of ghosts. The stagecoach was late. He checked his pocket watch for the 10th time, the metal cool against his rough fingers. When the distant rumble of wheels finally reached his ears, his stomach tightened with a mix of dread and fragile hope. The coach rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust, and the driver jumped down, muttering about the long haul from Cheyenne. Only one passenger stepped out. She was taller than he expected, with wide hips and a full, soft figure that strained gently against the simple gray traveling dress she wore. Her chestnut hair was pinned back neatly, but a few rebellious curls had escaped, framing a round, pretty face with warm brown eyes and full lips that trembled slightly. She carried a single worn carpet bag, clutching it like a shield. Even in the dim light, Thomas could see the exhaustion and quiet shame in her posture, the way she kept her shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to make herself smaller. The driver cleared his throat awkwardly. "Miss Abigail Sutton. This is your stop." Abigail's eyes met Thomas's for a brief second before dropping to the ground. "Mr. Reilly." Her voice was soft, melodic, but edged with nervousness. I'm sorry if I'm not what you expected." Thomas felt a sharp twist in his chest. He had seen that look before, on widows in town, on himself in the mirror after Clara's funeral. Rejection. The fear of not being enough. Before he could respond, the driver pulled out a crumpled telegram from his coat and handed it to her with obvious discomfort. "This came for you at the last station, ma'am. From the previous gentleman." Abigail's fingers shook as she unfolded it. Thomas watched her face pale as she read the words. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "What does it say?" Thomas asked quietly, though he already suspected. She swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. He saw my photograph and changed his mind. Said I was too fat for frontier life. That a man needs a strong, slender wife who can keep up with ranch work, not someone who would only be a burden. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, lifting her chin with quiet dignity. "I understand if you feel the same, Mr. Reilly. I can take the next coach back east. I won't trouble you." The emotional weight of her words hit Thomas like a physical blow. He saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the long journey, the repeated rejections, the quiet humiliation of being judged solely by her body. She stood there in the cooling evening air, strong and vulnerable all at once, and something deep inside him stirred. Not pity. Recognition. The same raw loneliness that had driven him to post that advertisement. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. The wind tugged at her skirt, but she didn't flinch. "Miss Sutton," he said, his voice low and steady, though his heart pounded. "I'm not the man who sent that telegram. And I'm not looking for a perfect picture from a catalog." Abigail looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Suspense thickened the air as she waited for the inevitable, but Thomas could feel it, the moment when most men would politely send her away, preserving their pride while breaking hers further. Instead, he reached out and gently took her carpetbag from her trembling hands. His fingers brushed hers, warm and calloused against her softer skin. "You've come a long way. The least I can do is offer you supper and a safe place to rest tonight. No promises beyond that. But you're not a burden. Not to me." Fresh tears welled in her eyes, but this time they carried something different, relief mixed with wary hope. You don't mind," she whispered. "Most men take one look and decide I'm too much." Thomas set the bag down on the porch steps and turned to face her fully. The ranch house stood behind him, windows glowing faintly with the lamp he had left burning for Emma. "My late wife, Clara, she wasn't slender either. She had strong arms from kneading bread and a laugh that could fill this whole valley. She carried our daughter and still found time to dance with me under the stars. I learned a long time ago that strength isn't measured in inches on a waist. It's in the heart. In the willingness to stay when life gets hard." He paused, emotion thickening his throat. The suspense hung heavy. Would she believe him? Would she see the sincerity in his tired blue eyes, or would past rejections make her turn away? Abigail searched his face for a long moment, her brown eyes shimmering. "I was rejected 3 times before this," she admitted softly, the words spilling out like a confession. Each time, the reason was the same. Too round. Too soft. Not built for hard living. I started to believe them. I almost didn't come on this journey, but I was so tired of being alone. Of feeling invisible. Thomas felt his own grief rise to meet hers. He stepped closer, close enough to see the faint freckles across her nose and the way her full figure rose and fell with shaky breaths. "Then stay," he said, the words coming out rough with feeling. "At least for tonight. Eat with us. Meet my daughter Emma. She hasn't smiled much since her mother passed. Maybe seeing someone kind will help her remember what warmth feels like." The offer hung between them, simple yet profound. Abigail's lips parted in surprise. A soft sob escaped her before she could stop it. She covered her mouth with one hand, shoulders trembling. "You're offering me a chance? Even after reading that telegram?" "I'm offering you a meal and a bed that isn't moving," Thomas replied, a small, genuine smile tugging at the corner of his mouth for the first time in over a year. "The rest, we can figure out one day at a time. No pressure. No judgment. Just 2 people who know what it's like to be knocked down by life." He extended his hand to her, not demanding, but open. Abigail hesitated only a second before placing her palm in his. Her hand was warm, slightly damp from nerves, and the contact sent a quiet spark through both of them. He helped her up the porch steps, the wood groaning softly under their combined weight. As they reached the door, little Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her quilt, her wide eyes curious rather than fearful. "Papa?" the girl whispered. "Who's that?" Thomas knelt slightly, still holding Abigail's hand. "This is Miss Abigail. She's had a very long trip. Think you can help me show her where the kitchen is? She might like some of that stew we made." Emma studied Abigail for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. "She looks soft," the child said matter-of-factly. "Like Mama's quilt." Abigail let out a watery laugh, the sound bright and unexpected. Tears spilled freely now, but they were healing ones. She knelt carefully to Emma's level, her full skirts pooling around her. "I like quilts," she said gently. "And I make very good apple pie. If your papa says it's all right, maybe I can teach you tomorrow." Thomas watched the exchange, his heart swelling with an emotion so intense it bordered on pain. The widow and the rejected bride, 2 souls the world had tried to diminish, standing together in the doorway of a lonely ranch house. The suspense of what tomorrow would bring lingered. Would Abigail stay? Could 2 broken people build something new? Would the harsh frontier judge her body the way others had? But in that single, golden moment as the first drops of rain began to fall, none of that mattered as much as the simple offer he had made. He offered her kindness when the world offered rejection. He offered her a place at his table when others saw only her size. And as Abigail rose and stepped inside, her hands still lightly linked with his, Thomas felt the first crack in the ice around his heart. The house no longer felt quite so empty. The night no longer felt quite so endless. Abigail turned to him just inside the door, her brown eyes shining with gratitude and the fragile beginnings of trust. "Thank you, Mr. Reilly," she whispered. "For seeing me. For offering everything." Thomas squeezed her hand gently. "Call me Thomas," he said, voice thick. "And you're welcome, Abigail. Welcome home, for as long as you want to stay." Outside, the rain fell steadily, washing the dust from the road. Inside, a struggling widower, a little girl, and a woman who had been told she was too much sat down together at the kitchen table. The stew was simple, the bread a bit stale, but the conversation flowed, tentative at first, then warmer, laced with quiet laughter and shared stories of loss and hope. The emotional current ran deep between them. The ache of grief meeting the ache of rejection, slowly weaving into something tender and new. Suspense still hummed beneath the surface. What would the neighbors say? What challenges would the ranch bring? Could love grow from such an unlikely beginning? But for tonight, in the warm glow of the oil lamp, Thomas had made his choice. He had offered her a chance. And in doing so, he had given them both the first real breath of hope either had felt in a very long time.